Episode 2 of Thomas and Friends is a classic Underdog story. The specific story it's based off of is nearly 80 years old now, and most of us weren't even alive when this episode was released, much less the 3 railway engines. But as many Underdog stories do, it carries a timeless sort of quality with it. So first, the play-by-play. Later on, we're going to talk about why this story is so special. A hint of lore, but mainly the emotional weight that this simple little story carries when you know a little more about what's behind it. Timestamps on screen, and if I've figured out video chapters should be available. We start this story with a shot of the sheds, with all of the first 5 characters resting in it. Henry is off to the left, looking like he's having a good time. James and Thomas sitting over to the right, Thomas looking generally happy, and James looking suspiciously happy. So happy, in fact, his eyes are misaligned. In the middle of the shed is Edward, sad, dejected, the smallest and weakest among them. Gordon is the opposite position, sitting right next to him, talking down at him. Driver won't choose you again. He wants strong engines like us. Clearly, Driver heard him talking shit, and he grabbed his fireman, hopped up in Edward's cab, and asked him if he'd like to come out today. Of course Edward said yes, so they get him ready and head off for work. The narrator mentions that the other engines were angry about being left behind. Excuse me, is there only a single engine crew among 5 engines? Really, this line was meant to emphasize they're seeing the old guy go out, and before them no less. It had to be something of an insult, I imagine. As if the crew were saying, yeah, this old tin can's better than any of you. Edward works hard all day, the coaches liked him, and the driver was happy as well. He gets back to the sheds late that night and tells everyone he's going out again tomorrow, and says, "What do you think of that?" It was more of a statement than a question, clearly. He falls asleep quite pleased with the day's events, while everyone else looks at him annoyed. This is the first night shot we get in the series, by the way, and it's got a sort of industrial charm to it. It's taken from across the yard with a handful of wagons scattered around, but no lighting except for on the sheds. There's something special about night shots in this series. The next morning, it was as if Gordon had learned nothing, and his bragging continued. "You watch me, little Edward, as I rush through with the express. That'll be a fine sight for you. Look out for me this afternoon," and he heads off. Edward moves off as well to do some shunting. He's having a great time, pushing trucks and letting them roll into place, bumping into each other. The narrator describes this as playing. So Edward plays until there are no more trucks, and then stops for a rest. Gordon passes through in an awful mood, pulling a bunch of dirty trucks. He's groaning about it the whole time, too, embarrassed about having to do this kind of work. Hearing the complaining as he passes, Edward can't help but laugh. A little while later, someone comes to speak with Edward's driver, asking him to come help Gordon up the hill. This here's the good stuff. Repeated mentions of the crew, placing them as absolutely necessary. It reminds you that these are meant to be machines. They really are helpless without a crew. This disappears completely later on in the model era of the show. But for now, I love it. I will continue to praise it. It doesn't really make sense that Henry gets stuck in the tunnel later this season when he could just reverse without a driver. So this is really important to me. Back to the story. Gordon's sitting here on the hill, angry and red-faced. His crew's trying to talk him into actually trying, but he just isn't having any of it. It's around this time Edward shows up. Gordon reverses back down the hill, and Edward buffers up, ready to help him despite the terrible way he's been treated. Gordon thinks it's no use. Edward could never make a difference here. But they give it a shot anyway, and as they do, he groans out, "I can't do it, I can't do it." Edward, on the other hand, is absolutely determined to make it happen, panting, "I will do it," to himself as he gives it everything he has. When they reach the top of the hill, Gordon takes off without so much as a thank you, instead saying proudly, "I've done it, I've done it." Edward follows far behind, out of breath. He runs on to the next station where his driver tells him that he's very proud of him. While the fireman starts refilling his water, his driver walks around front and promises this now very sooty Edward that he'll get his paints out tomorrow and give him a new coat of blue with red stripes so he'll be the smartest in the sheds. Now for a hint of lore. This is Railway series lore, mind you, so you'll have to bear with me here. The TV series doesn't follow it closely in the later series, but this early on, it's pretty well established that that's what it is. Or it's meant to be something close at least. Edward is a Furness Railway K2. At their time, in their place, they were the best of the best, even if it was only for a couple of years. Edward was in the same position that Gordon is now. Gordon's based on the LNER-A1, a 100-mile-per-hour heavy express locomotive. When they were built, they were quite literally the best of the best, and they would be rebuilt and remain in service well into nationalization of the UK railways. By the time this story takes place, Gordon is a young hotshot, and Edward is more than halfway through the expected service life of a steam engine. He's been outdated for years. Sure, he's decently fast, but fast trains are what Gordon's for. Henry, James, even Thomas all have more pulling power than him by far. Edward is the oldest engine in the cast at this time, and for a long time after. He knows it too. And to make it worse, Gordon knows it. Gordon presses on this soft spot hard, and when the chance comes for Edward to prove his worth, he has to take it without question, and uses it to its fullest. He was truly happy just having the chance to work, and spent all of his second day back in service doing work that we later find out is deemed as undignified and below tender engines. Not just that, he does it with a smile. He makes a game out of it, and when Gordon makes a fool of himself, it's old Edward that comes to the rescue despite the bullying. He gives it his all, when Gordon's groaning continues. In a couple of days, Edward has displayed an unbreakable work ethic, and a shocking lack of the ego we find among all of the other tender engines. At this point, we've only got to know Gordon, but later episodes show us the same behavior out of James and Henry, with their own personal twists to it, of course. We can't fit the whole of a character's personality into one short episode, sure, but they got a fantastic start with Edward. Chicken tenders break. At the start of this story, Edward was at rock bottom, but through hard work he proved his worth and earned a more permanent place here. The other engines don't have to approve. They can say he should be withdrawn or whatever, but his crew loves him, and he's here to stay. It's really sweet to me that after Gordon just takes off, Edward's driver promises him a new coat of paint. It's some small reassurance that you've still got it and we still appreciate you. As for Gordon, we get to see his personality almost in full here, at least the worst parts of him. To call him a bully wouldn't do justice to the way he was treating Edward. He never said it outright, but the way he was talking kind of implied withdrawal. Gordon is an asshole. First he drags Thomas for a huge distance at speeds he's not meant for, and then he goes on to abuse the elderly. This is possibly the worst he gets in the series. A real problem that's actually good at what he does. It's like having a genuinely awful coworker, but he's amazing at the job he does, so the boss keeps him on despite how he treats everyone on staff. But today, that coworker looked like a massive idiot. He won't acknowledge it, sure, but everyone knows. This is another simple two-character episode. There was a few goofs here and there, James's face starting to fall off in the first shot, Edward wearing James's face at the end, little things that you might expect at the start of a series filmed with intricate models and sets. The sets were pretty good though. I didn't see anything that was particularly out of place here, but hey, I'm probably missing something. As far as I'm concerned, this is a 9 out of 10. No moral shoved down your throat, but it's a very clear one. Show don't tell is hard at work here. Get cocky, you're gonna look stupid. On the other side, hard work and perseverance pays off. Classic underdog story. This was a noticeable step up from the already good episode 1. Also, ooh, I love those night shots and those little heartfelt moments. This one was really good. Alright, the review's over. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the changes I'm trying to make over the last video, so if all you were here for was the review, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. And for anyone who's crazy enough to stick around with me here, I want to talk about the visual changes. There's not much difference with the audio. I'm going to probably use similar music to the last one, but I'm going to be incorporating trains content in here. The models that I used are all from wildnorwester's website, and the sets, I believe, are from Ravenshire Works, so I'll have links to both of their sites down in the description. Other changes are the borders around the video. They should be different. I should have at least 3 different ones that I alternate between throughout this video. I haven't made them yet, but I've laid out ideas. Like, I know there's going to be some sort of difference. And yeah, I'm still going to have to do the mirroring and the color shifting because, again, I don't want to sacrifice my firstborn to Mattel. Yeah, so that's all I had for today. Thanks for watching. Same thing, same time next week. See you there.